name's Dr. Sandi Mann. I'm a university lecturer in the University of Central Lancashire, psychology lecturer, and I've also set up my own businesses recently, Advantage Psychology, which provides training and consultancy for businesses in the Northwest, and also my mind training clinic, which helps people with phobias, panic attacks, obsessive compulsive disorder, and retrains their mind to help them cope and get on and have a normal life.
Now we live in a society now, Sandi, where there's lots of stresses and strains. People are being laid off at work, or they're facing, the threat of redundancy. Are you coming across people in the business world who are suffering from stress and phobia? And if so, how are you helping them?
Yeah, stress has always been an issue. And I actually think there's a kind of competitive element to stress. So, everyone's trying to out-stress everybody else, and everyone's trying to be more stressed than everybody else. And it's changed because it used to be people were afraid to admit they were stressed. And now they're afraid to admit they're not stressed because, in today's recessionary times, you're expected to be stressed.
It's kind of the new cool.
It is cool to be stressed. But what I'm finding is that it's manifesting itself in a little bit more, scary ways. So the panic attacks are becoming more of a problem. So whereas before it was a general stress and everyone's trying to outstress each other, now it's the panic attacks that people aren't talking about. And because people are already so stressed, it's like the straw that breaks the camel's back.
And where do those panic attacks tend to occur? Is there any pattern to them? That they occur on the way to work, in anticipation of going into work, or are they at work?
Well, this is the funny thing about panic. It usually comes when you're least expecting it. And the first panic attack that people have can occur anywhere, on the bus, in work, somewhere where you just completely don't expect it, and you're like, oh, what's this? I'm dying, I'm having a heart attack. And because it's such a terrible, really scary thing to have, people are so terrified of having another one.
And what are the physical symptoms?
They get palpitations, they can't breathe properly, their heart rate increases, they're sweating, they feel faint, they think they're going to faint, they genuinely feel that they're going to die. It is the most terrifying thing for people to experience. It's so terrifying that they live in fear of another attack, and that fear feeds future attacks, raises their stress levels.
And are there things that typically they are getting stressed about? Is it an event that's coming up, maybe a difficult meeting, or is it just a general stress that suddenly hits them hard?
Usually it's a build-up of stress. Things like panic and problems with anger, those sorts of things, which I deal with a lot now. These sorts of things are built on a background of stress. But what happens with the panic is that it might just be a general stressor that's caused it. But once they fear getting them, then they fear getting them in important places.
Right.
And that is often, like if they're giving a talk, public speaking, giving a presentation,
so
an important
what if
meeting.
it happens when I'm doing this?
Exactly.
Kind of thing?
That's what they fear. So they don't fear having a panic attack at home. They don't fear it they do fear it a bit on the bus, but they don't fear it so much as when it's really important for them not to have a panic attack.
Consequences of having it in those situations.
If it's really important for them not to have a panic attack, that's when they're most likely to get one, because that fear feeds it, and it's a vicious cycle. And that's why the key to learning to cope with panic is learning to accept it and being able to not fear a panic attack. I never train people not to have panic attacks. I train people to accept them and live with them.
To cope with it.
Yeah, yes. And then they stop fearing them and they do fade away.
So can you explain a little bit more about how you help people if they're in this situation?
Yeah. The key to helping people with panic is to retrain their mind and help them cope with the physical symptoms. So it's twofold. It's cognitive and behavioural. Most people fear terrible consequences of panic, and it's about learning and training and educating people so that they can see that actually there's nothing that scary about them. Nothing will happen. You won't die. You won't faint. You're not going to vomit. You're not going to lose control. You can live through this panic attack.
So it's helping them maybe become a little, through awareness techniques, I guess, of helping them to be not embroiled in the feeling and panic about it.
And also giving them safety mechanisms, giving them ways to cope with it as well. So relaxation techniques are very effective. Sometimes people have little safety mechanisms. Some people carry water around with them. Not why I carry my water. I carry water, but not for that reason. But people carry. I had one client who always carried a carton of apple juice, and if they felt that because sometimes they feel like they're going to choke, and they'd get the straw out and they put it in a carton, and that very act helped calm them down. They're able to drink. Some people use chewing gum. Some people have an elastic band that they wear around the wrist, and they can flick it at themselves, and whatever it is.
And is that like an anchor? You know, is it about anchoring a positive past memory?
It's more about...
Because obviously in sport we see people visualising things. I think Johnny Wilkinson used to put his thumb and forefinger together before he was going to kick a goal in the rugby match.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so I think they were trying to anchor a positive memory and bring it forward in a way.
This is slightly different. It's more like, if you imagine that you're stood up and you're giving a talk and you feel like you're going to faint because you have a panic attack, and you lean on the desk like I'm doing now, and it's that kind of anchor, it's that kind of safety mechanism. Okay. So you can... obviously not everybody can stand up and lean on a desk, but we can use that example, the flicking of the wrist, whatever it is. Yes. It's a similar sort of safety mechanism. The drink, the act of doing something innocuous, it won't draw attention to yourself.
But it's something to go where it's like a comfort thing. You can go to it, say, well, I'll be all right with that. Yeah,
like you're saying with Johnny Wilkinson, then you learn to associate it with relaxing
with feeling
and
okay.
feeling okay.
Yes.
So you come at the panic from lots of different angles. But the main thing is actually, if you stay in a panic situation, we actually have this process called habituation. It's like, if you go on a roller coaster. Now, you'd never get me on one of these roller coasters.
Me neither.
Have you? You're not one for going on the big one in Blackpool.
No, I might watch it.
Well, I might watch it, but you'd never get me go. Right. So if I said to you, Andrew, right, I'm going to pay you $500,000, would you go on it? Would you go on it?
Well, I'd think about it.
You'd think about it. What about $1 million? What's your price, Andrew?
I don't know.
Everyone has a price. Now, if someone said to me, my price is probably, I don't know, 50 quid. No. If somebody said to me, okay, I'll give you $500,000 to go on this roller coaster, the big one, I would probably want to do it. Now, the best way to do it, to overcome my absolute terror of roller coasters, would be to actually stay on the thing. Because you know how you first go on something? Well, you don't, because you don't go on them, but people who go on them, oh, it's terrible, it's terrifying. Oh my God, it's terrifying. I'm going on again. And after 3 or 4 times, they're like, oh, it's nothing. It's easy. We habituate. Our bodies cannot sustain that level of arousal. We just can't. We habituate to everything. That's why we grow bored of things. That's why a delicious new chocolate, a few weeks, if we eat it all the time, we get bored of it.
So we kind of bring it down to a more normal level.
That's
something that was abnormal becomes more normal.
If you're scared of lifts, the best treatment, go in a lift all day, and eventually you just get bored of it.
Yes.
And it's the same with panic. If you stay in that situation that's causing you panic, it will go. Our bodies cannot sustain that panic reaction. Now, most people do the opposite. They run away. They fear it. They do everything they can to get out of that panic situation, and that feeds the cycle.
Yes.
The way to cope with it is to stay there, and you can't stay there if you haven't got the tools to enable you to stay.
Now, you talked about coping with the physical symptoms as well.
Yeah. The physical symptoms, a lot of it is to do with learning to relax and learning to accept them. So the first thing I say to people who've got panic is, okay, let's stop fearing it. I want you to actually have a panic. If I say to somebody, I want you to produce a panic attack now, they can't do it. And the reason is that you've given them permission to do it. Whereas in normal situations, they're not giving themselves permission. Sure. They're doing the opposite. They're trying to forbid them.
Sure.
And we all know what it's like when you try and forbid, so I say, don't think of a white elephant. That's all you can think about.
See, yes.
So it's giving people permission, and that helps reduce the physical symptoms, but also understanding what's going on in your body with the physical symptoms. Panic is like an adrenaline response. It's a fight or flight response, a normal adaptive mechanism that we go into to help us cope. It gives us extra energy. The reason our heart rate increases, it sends blood around our body, it helps us run fast, and people do run fast when they panic. So it's there for a reason. And it's just about learning what that reason is and why we get into this response. And actually, people can learn to cope with it really quite quickly within sometimes 2 or 3 sessions.
Sure. What do you find is the toughest challenge for you? What's the thing that's really quite difficult to deal with?
People who don't want to change, and they think they do. Sometimes people have anxiety, panic, phobias even, and they are a self-defense mechanism. They're a self-sabotage mechanism. For example, I had a client once who, if only I could do this, if only I could, the world would be, if I could do this, I could go on this course, I could do this training, I could be the top of my industry. And actually it took a long time for me to realise that subconsciously they were frightened. They were frightened that if they took their barrier away, they would have nothing nothing to defend against it,
Yes.
no excuse, if you like.
Yes.
And then it would be all down to them, and then it would be like...
the if only I could is like a safety blanket.
Yeah,
for
because
them. It means
it's not
I don't
my
have to
fault.
go in those areas. They're actually a bit scary.
Yeah, it's not my fault I'm not top of my profession. It's because I've got this problem. If I didn't have that, I'd be top.
Yes.
Take that away, and then it's down to your own skill and talent.
Exposed.
And then it's like, oh, I can't admit that I'm not talented enough. I might not be talented enough. Students with exams often self-sabotage. They'll get into this situation of panicking and say, that's why I'm not doing well. That's why I didn't get a first or a 2-1. It's not that I'm not capable, because that fear of accepting that you may not be as good as you'd like to be is too much. But
we all meet people, don't we, Sandy, who have a reason why something won't work.
Yeah.
There's always an obstacle there.
Yeah.
Now, is that just about becoming negative, or is it a little bit about what you're saying about it's a safety thing for people to fall behind?
Yeah, I mean, it can be quite healthy because, on the other hand, you have people who take all the blame on themselves, and that's another problem. I deal a lot with self-esteem issues, and they take it all, it's my fault. Women are quite bad at this, quite bad at having poor self-esteem. It's my fault that I haven't done this. It's my fault. If only I was better, if only I was as good as everybody else. So sometimes having these defensive mechanisms can help. That's why they're there. That's why they're called defensive mechanisms. But there's a balance, isn't there, with everything, having healthy defence mechanisms. So, it's not my fault, but not such strong barriers that you can't get through them and they're actually becoming walls that you can't penetrate.
Sure. We meet people from the education world very often, and they're drawing attention to the stress that students are feeling, with the pressure they're under to pass exams. Yeah. Are you coming across a lot of that, stress and depression amongst students?
I gave a session just recently on cognitive behavioural therapy, talking about my clinic really. And after the session, so I was talking about panic attacks mainly, and after the session 20 students came to see me about their panic attacks. I was really shocked. I've never had so many. You usually get 1 or 2.
And do you think that's because of the economy and the pressure on achievement in exams? If you don't get all your exam grades, there's no chance you'll make it in life.
No,
Is there more of that now?
No, I think it's more than that. I think it's more to do with the fact that most of them are now working, and that's a sea change. Most students work for money to fund their way, so they've got the added financial pressures. So they're trying to succeed at work, they're trying to succeed at their studies. A lot of the studies have become more modular, less exam-based, so it's continual pressure.
Right.
Whereas in the old days, I'm only talking about 5 years ago, they'd have the pressure at the end, they had the exam at the end,
the exam and cram and so forth,
and then it's over. Yeah, and you could say, right, I'm cutting down on my work for that last term or whatever.
Yes.
Now it's continual. You've got the juggling of money, work, module, continual assessment, and it's living away from home for the first time, coping with all of that, social pressures. It's too much for a lot of people. A lot of young people, it's just too much for them.
So where now for you then, Sandy? What projects have you got on the go at the moment? Where do you see things going for you in the coming months and years?
Wow, right. Well, I really want to develop the mind training clinic in lots of different places. I work in Preston at the University of Central Lancashire, but I'm based in Manchester. So I have a clinic in Manchester looking for a city centre base, and really want to bring that help to a lot of people who just can't or won't access it on the NHS. Business people particularly. First of all, they don't want to wait 18 months or whatever for an appointment, and they want an appointment to suit them near their place of work, and they don't necessarily want their employer to know that they're getting this input. I think there's a big need for that, so I want to try and fill that need. The other side is the advantage psychology, so helping businesses, going into businesses, but also working with the university, looking at developing, looking at using psychology from a university perspective and research. One of my big university areas is actually boredom. And I research boredom, love boredom, not bored by it at all.
You love boredom.
I love boredom, and I research boredom.
You get excited about boredom.
I get very excited about boredom. I could talk to you for hours about boredom, what causes boredom, why we're bored, how we react to being bored, what we can do about it. I'm interested in who is boredom prone. I'm interested in the link between boredom proneness and things like attention deficit disorder. Fascinating area.
Teenagers always complain of being bored.
Yeah, and I mean, I could talk about boredom for hours, but I think that we are creating a more boredom-prone society because, I mean, look at the kids. I've got a 4-year-old, goes to school, interactive whiteboards, smart boards, not like the old days where the stimulation was just mild. Now there's massive amount of stimulation.
Too many stimuli.
Too much stimulant.
Too much of everything.
Yeah, and they expect it. So they grow up, and then they've got parents hot-housing them and thinking, taking them from activity to activity, and parents fearing that their kids will be bored. Oh my God, they're bored. I'm a terrible mother or father. I better take them to a museum. I better take them to something. And not giving the kids a chance to be bored. They're getting to university, and I'm seeing this. I'm seeing the young people who come into university expecting to be entertained, and expecting things to be given to them in an exciting format. They can't cope with lack of stimulation. And so we're cultivating this boredom-prone society, and then they're going into the workplace, and they're expecting every day to be a thrill, a life of excitement, and they can't cope with the mundane. And every job has its mundane parts to it.
So, what's the answer, Sam? I mean, do we need more space and time with nothing in it?
Yes, we do. We need to give our kids space to be bored. We need to stop being frightened of being bored. As adults, we need to stop being frightened of being bored. So you've got the classic situation of people being stuck in a car. Traffic or in the supermarket. Oh my God, I'm bored. What can I do? Let me get my phone out. Let me do something to fill this time. When actually we should be looking to use our brains to fill the time, going places in our heads. Daydreaming, fantastic. The most creative things come out of people being bored.
Yes.
People can write books in their heads. They can create things. They can invent things, set up businesses because they're bored.
Yes.
So boredom is good, and I want to turn that on its head. I like turning things on the head and saying, let's get away from all this fear of boredom and embrace boredom.
Sure. Sandi Mann, thank you very much.
Thank you.